For many years now, Russ and Craig have had many wide-ranging conversations with folks from all over the gaming world. This is one of those conversations.
D6G, The Lost Chapter.
So anyway, this movie was awful. And, Russ?
Yeah.
Could that possibly be, is that Niel Fawcett coming in the door of
Niel.
the Dunkin' Donuts?
Hey, Neil, welcome to Dunks.
Hey, guys, how are you?
Good. Now, Neil, what is your favorite donut?
What brings you all the way across the pond to Dunkin' Donuts? Now, actually, have you ever been to a Dunkin' Donuts?
I have been to a Dunkin' Donut. Yeah, absolutely. Well, don't forget, I spent an awful lot of time in the US, so I know. So it's, if anybody ever saw my waistline, I like donuts. Let's face the reality, So I kind of like sticky sweet ones. Anything sticky sweet, that's kind of cool.
Oh,
Anything sticky sweet. Now, does it have to be round, or crawlers okay too?
I'll eat deformed. Deformed's fine.
Deformed's fine. Okay, fair enough. All right.
He is a function over form kind of guy, donut consumer.
So, Craig, I have a question for you. Since Neil's here,
you're more on the volume, I think.
There you go.
I want to know. I got to figure this out. So, as you guys know, I play Firestorm Armada. Okay, so I have my Aquan Prime, but I got in early, so I kind of got into it when there was like 6 factions, and then now I'm getting into Planetfall. But honestly, I haven't been keeping up, and it seems like while I was away, the universe has exploded with like 80 gajillion more races.
Well, 80 gajillion might be a little bit of an extreme, Russ, but for someone who counted it recently for a little game show, I can tell you there's either 23 or 24 distinct factions in Firestorm Armada right now, depending on whether or not you count trading companies as a faction. Because trading companies were the only ones on the website that didn't have at least one model as an example. So let's start at the bottom of the pile, Neil, and just very quickly, can you play a trading company in Firestorm Armada?
You can play elements of it. I mean, over the next few months, we'll be bringing out patrol group, patrol fleet level box sets of a lot of them. So the first ones will be the Syndicate, I believe, and the Omnidyne. So I'm actually trying to remember what's on the release schedule, what the guys told me they're doing. But basically, all of the various mercenary factions will be moved up to patrol fleet, the patrol group level. It's a big part of what we're doing with Firestorm at the moment is getting it. We were a little bit bitty with some of these guys. Mm-hmm. You can really form full fleet. So there's a very big push to get everybody up to full fleet status. And by full fleet, I mean they can form a legitimate patrol fleet in the game.
Nice,
cool. Okay, so 24, Russ.
24 factions.
24. Now, so we don't have all night.
No.
So what we're gonna do is first of all, there's the 6 big ones, the 6 originals, right? And they break up into 2 sort of teams. The Kurek Alliance, which I view as the bad guys, and the Xenian League, which are clearly the plucky individualists, the freedom fighters, if you will.
Whoa.
Okay. What?
No.
You don't agree?
No, definitely not. First of all, any faction with fish people are the good guys, because we all know that fish and any aquatic race are in harmony with the environment, and we all also know that the environment is the ultimate form of goodness and light.
Light.
And
therefore, which is why you use lasers.
Yes. So therefore, since the Aquan Prime faction is part of the Kurek Alliance, I would say that the Kurek Alliance is clearly the good guys. Now, Neil, back me up on this. Go.
Oh, I think Neil is probably in my corner.
Neil?
I'll be frankly honest with you. There's no real good guys in Firestorm.
That is such a cop-out answer.
They've all got an axe to grind. So not quite commonly, a lot of them are quite badly behaved. So whether you're the Terrans nuking things, or whether you're the Directorate messing about with people and kind of like cutting them up and slicing them up and doing crazy stuff with them, or whether you're the Dendrenzi who are basically just a lot of bad-tempered guys. So no, I don't think there's not that. I mean, actually, probably the Ceruleans are pretty good guys. They're pretty good lizards. They're overall they're pretty good, generally speaking.
I look at the Dendrenzi as sort of like the Charlie Sheens of the Firestorm universe.
Winning.
Railgun winning.
I really don't. I don't know how to take that.
That's every one of my Dendrenzi warships is captained by a clone of Charlie Sheen, whose DNA was carried through time in a little time capsule that we found in a vault filled with porn and drugs.
Okay.
But anyway, so back on track here. Would you like to now disown this particular podcast?
Gosh, I need to go to bed.
That's true. Neil, could you tell us a little bit, like, going from the point of view of these 6 main factions? Like, what's the basic, very beginning, sort of the nugget of story that's at the center of the game?
Greed. It was at the very beginning. It was the kind of the angst and arguments and kind of falling out with each other, and just the usual thing of what should have been smooth sailing just falling apart, and then just escalating into all out warfare and more greed, and then kind of more aggressive ambition. I mean, really, a lot of the backdrop of it is an awful lot of races that should have known better, and it's sort of like, whether it was kind of humankind losing its way, or whether it was the aliens getting on the bandwagon along the line. I think when we first started, I wanted to create something that was. I can't use the word believable, because that's just a dumb thing to say, because it's made up. But I wanted something that was could be real.
Yeah,
and
plausible.
I wanted to be flawed individuals. I wanted it to be. Lots and lots of races that were just at each other's throats, and alliances were formed, and there was politics, and not too critical, because it's at the end of the day, it's a war game, so you've got to kind of try and create a rich fabric that has got an awful lot of the politicking about these entities trying to form these alliances and survive, and then wage war and steal from each other and all the rest of it, but without. Well, I don't want it to be too fluffy and too nonsensical, really. I just wanted it to be real. I mean, that sounds like a crazy thing to say, but it was, the fact was, I wanted them all to be different. I wanted to feel different, to be different, to interact differently, and to basically, at the end of the day, they all just want to kill each other. Because they're not friendly.
Right.
Most of them are. They're not nice to each other. It's a war game at the end of the day.
That's true. Is there a core conflict that the rest of the races sort of array themselves around?
Yeah, I mean the whole thing. I mean it's a kick-off between the Dendrenzi and the Terrans, really, and to some extent you've got things like the Directorate keep fueling it, and they've all got their kind of their various reasons. The Aquans. The Aquans are almost the sensible ones. They're the kind of the keepers of an awful lot of historical knowledge.
Don't tell Russ that.
The sensible ones, Craig. Sensible ones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The people who
they know well.
Yes.
They're also we can counterpoint that with the fact that they may be sensible, but they know a lot of stuff that they should have talked about. They know. I mean, for starters, they know all about the overseers, which is that they've arrived into the plot line with the latest box set that we've done, and so they know all about the overseers and what happened there, and that's sort of probably something they should have shared with the rest of the galaxy.
With the overseers, by the way, we come to 25 factions. Just saying.
We can't trust the people with this.
Well, actually, sort of spoiler alert on that one. We're bringing out the Saurians as well, so that they'll be coming out this year. So
I saw that was mentioned on the forums today.
So maybe that makes 26. But then again, there's a civil war. There's a civil war going on there, so maybe that's 27. Who knows?
Yeah. See, there you go. So just for like as background, so you've got the Terran Alliance, that's Earth, and they they were all humanity. They spread out. They went off in one direction in particular that was sort of like the path of least resistance, squeezed themselves into a bulbous shape of space that really wasn't claimed except by these smaller and unallied races, claimed it as their own, and then sort of became the rugged individuals, if you will, that were being the Terran Alliance was sort of taking all of the resources and the wealth of that region, but the region wasn't seeing a lot of the benefits of the core systems, and so they ultimately rebelled and became the Dindrenzi Federation. Is that sort of a summary that would be acceptable?
More or less, and then basically the Terrans played the heavy hand, and they tried to kind of drag it all back in land, and then they went to war, and then eventually you had the whole kind of like nuking the planet, and the Dindrenzi, of course, and the RSN have managed to kind of keep propagating the whole conspiracy thing as well. So between the Directorate and the RSN, they kind of keep winding the Dindrenzi up. So the whole thing will never. It'll never settle down. They'll never achieve peace or anything. They will always despise each other. I mean, in Planetfall, we've got the RSN assault box coming up, and right at the middle of that is a thing called the Temple of Dramos. And it's this kind of the idea is it's this installation that lands on the planet, and it acts as a sort of the idea is it's supposed to inspire the troops to victory, because it's all based around the whole Temple of Dramos and the religious element that actually not jokingly, but it's kind of religion is being used to fuel the war by basically inciting more and more hatred, sort of thing, which kind of almost marries up to kind of like certain history on of the world, with the way that religion was quite commonly used in that way here. So, I wanted to try and get some sort of like some real depth to it all, and a kind of a broadness to the way that they all kind of fight with each other, and it happens, and it's sort of. I mean, the guys who have been looking after the back plot on it have done a great job on that. I mean, people like Spartan Alex now, who's taken over the mantle of writing a lot of that, is really enjoying himself with what we're generating on the back plot. And of course we keep, the thing is, we're trying to keep the story evolving as well as the war keeps going in the Storm Zone. We've now got 2 new fronts opening up. We're about to launch a series of online campaigns. So you've got the new. So you got the central activity happening around the Storm Zone, which has always been the point of contention. That is the breaking point, because that's where everybody is nipping into this area, right, on the map. And in fact, we just finished a new map with a whole lot of new updates, and there's we're actually going to be putting a gigantic version of that map up for download. Actually, it's about. I'm just looking at it now. Actually, it's about how big is it? Let's have a look. Here we go. Details. It's about 5,000 pixels wide and by about 3,500 deep. It's a very large, highly detailed map. Yeah, well, the idea being is that people will be able to plot and plan their campaign settings, but in essence, you've got this kind of pivotal area of space which is being constantly hammered by people in Storm Zone. But we're starting up a series of expansions in the south through Cerulean territory. We've got the Relthorsans are actually doing a little bit of dubious stuff heading along the bottom of the map when people get hold of it, where they're pushing across some of the weakest Cerulean space and opening up, and they're coming in through into Terran space. But the interesting bit is what the Directorate have been doing. They've been going up through the top of the Aquan Sabrutan area and into Saurian space, and they're the ones that have been brokering the conflict with those guys, so that the Saurian territory is going to effectively split with a faction that's trying to remain neutral, and then a faction at the top that's going to start fueling the war with the Directorate and trying to take some Terran territories away. So it's all going to be very messy, and I say messy, lots and lots of fighting, so lots and lots of new areas. But the storm zone is still being battered, but we started extending that out into the Aquan space. But I'm sorry, I'm probably sounding incredibly boring now. But it's there's lots of points, there's lots of areas on the map now where we can start opening up conflicts. We've got a nice set of rules coming up. I say rules. Campaign notes, for want of a better expression, that will start allowing people to map the route of their fleets and how they can basically use the map itself to track how their fleets can move across using the way stations on it to plan all of their FSD jumps.
Oh, cool!
So something actually, because the way that we got full space working in the game is you can't just make the giant leap and just land on somebody's planet, because there's no point having things like recon fleets and patrol fleets, because you just arrive on somebody's doorstep with a big fleet and nuke the planet. Mm-hmm. So we've always had this idea of breaking the fold space. So we've got some technology primers coming up on how fold space drives work and how to use the map and how to use the waypoints, and basically how you can basically navigate across the map with your fleet. So the idea being is that people can hopefully generate more and more campaign settings. Of course, we'll be rolling out campaign rules for that as well. But yeah, cool. It's there's a lot in there. There's a lot of races, and they play various roles. Some of them get chewed up and spat out, and they have to go and lick their wounds. People like the Illusions. They all kind of vanished off to go and lick their wounds after their little problem with the Aquans and things like that. And the Dendrenzi Legislature is a big area of space, and they're constantly pushing at the buffer zone. There is the storm zone between them. They're always they're trying it, and bit. I know I wanted them all to have a different feel to them. You've got the Directorate of the big overpowering corporation. The Dendrenzi are the wronged ones. The Aquans are the ones who think that they're basically the race that kind of act as the sensible ones and hold it all together.
Because they are. Let's be honest.
Pretentious and annoying, as I think.
Because they are. That the Aquans are that race. So it's not about.
Yeah, it's true. Right. You got the Terrans who are incredibly bullish and kind of cocky about it all. Again, probably the Ceruleans are the most sensible of them all. But
because they're cold-blooded, so
right.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, and then of course you got the Real Thors who basically, they'll do anything they can to basically just sort of take a square inch of a planet. To be honest with you,
right.
Have you guys...
And you got the Turquoise who are constantly trying to prove themselves to the Aquans and trying to be something more to the Terrans. I think there's lots of the military aspects like the Works Raptor and the Hawker and all of these kind of ones that have generated that have evolved because of the war, because of the military aspect. These ones that they've taken a more complete role in the galaxy because of the power of the military and because of the power of expenditure. War makes money for a lot of companies, and that's what certain entities within the galaxy have become. They are warmongers because it's money.
Right. Now, so there's a lot of background, clearly, and I'm just going to ask a couple quick questions from our patrons before we move back to the fluff. With all of this background, and you're talking now about like technical information about the fold space drives and everything, is there any thoughts maybe about a future role-playing game, either in Firestorm or maybe in Dystopian Wars?
I get asked that an awful lot. I mean, the only thing I will say on that one is that I love the idea of it. I don't have the skill set inside the company to generate that. I think it will be a fantastic setting for it. I think there's a kind of a quasi element of role play with Spec Ops in the way that it will deliver certain elements of some of the scenarios and some of the settings for that game. Mm-hmm. However, there isn't a true blood role-playing system planned because we haven't done. But I mean, I'd love to see one because, of course, that's just yet another wonderful aspect of a galaxy. We are developing this backplot and storylines, and I think it will be a fantastic thing to have. I just don't have the resource or capability myself to do that.
And another question from another patron was, with all of this background and the fluff and the writing that's getting done, do you have any thoughts to maybe doing, like, I know Mantic did a an anthology of short stories, and then other companies are now like Privateer Press and other companies are doing novels. Is there any hope maybe in the future of getting some more fiction out there based on some of your properties?
Well, funny enough, we've actually been approached by a couple of authors who are very keen to start generating some novels set in the Firestorm Galaxy. So, it's like all these things. It's all down to, it generally bounces down to time. Mm-hmm. Sort of and kind of allocation of resource. I love the idea of it because, I like reading. I've just had a bunch of documents created that we're going to do as downloads on the military structure of the Core 6 races. And that's probably somewhere in the region of about sort of 40 or 50,000 words between the documents, and it's great reading. But as to kind of the novel idea, yeah, I would love to finally think that would come to the Firestorm Galaxy. So if there's any really cool authors out there want to have a crack at it, then come and talk to me.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And then one last question was, Robert was wondering, I guess today Spartan Alex announced that there's going to be some scenarios with the Storm Zone where players can actually play them, report the battles, and those battles might be incorporated into the development of the Fluff. Or is that misunderstood, or is Spartan Alex going rogue?
I think Alex went the rogue years ago. No, I had a conversation with him the other night where I signed off on a kind of a dual campaigns setting where we want people to play the games and report back so we can track the war. So I think that kind of like that narrative created by the input from your customer base who are playing the games, I think it's a fantastically strong thing to do. So as to whether it's how far it will mesh into changing the actual overall storyline, I don't know. I don't know what the guys plan, but to be honest with you, I don't touch all aspects of it. Some of the guys run those bits themselves. So I think that may be something that Alex might or may not be planning with the 5-star focus. I don't know. I do know that the campaign is going up, and I know that they're kind of going to start pulling in place to play the game. So I'd like to see it. Okay, so then from
a different direction, does it sound cool?
Yeah, it sounds great.
Yeah, okay, cool. To once again wrench things back into the direct, I'm going to give my own understanding of the two major sides with the 6 basic factions. And then we can maybe touch on some of the smaller ones, and just to give listeners sort of an idea of just the sheer depth that's going on here. So you've got the Terrans versus the Dindrenzi, basically. And the Dindrenzi are, now what I heard when you were talking about the Directorate and the Wren's System Navy is that the Directorate is basically the passive-aggressive girlfriend of Charlie Sheen. So Charlie Sheen could calm down, except the passive-aggressive girlfriend's always poking at him. So we'll go with the Xenian League first, which are, the aggressors sort of, I guess, a little bit, depending on your point of view. And there you've got the Dindrenzi Federation, which are these guys who are, fighting for their own whatever, independence, or they want their place in the galaxy. The Directorate, which is sort of this super hyper, I believe the term you guys use is hyper-capitalist conglomerate of corporations that basically just war profiteers. They're driving the war so that they're using it to research. They're using it to test their new theories. They're selling weapons to everybody. And then you have the Relthosa, who are sort of insectile. And their kind of thing is, a long time ago, somebody came and almost kicked their butt. So they have been super defensive and aggressive ever since then. So if you show up on their doorstep and say, hey, we come in peace, they'll basically kill you and send the heads of all your envoys back to your home planet saying, don't ever come here again. So that's sort of basically right, yeah?
Well, maybe you should write my Fluff.
I've had a touch at it.
He's lobbying.
No, in the simplistic forms, yeah. I mean, we in the rule book, and of course, you can download the Firestorm book. We've got a very precise version of the backgrounds in there. I think it's sort of we've never delved too complex a storyline out there. We kind of always kept it to ourselves a little bit and kind of handed out enough that we felt people needed to play the game. But I think over the course of the next year we need to definitely roll out significantly more of that, because it has got to the point where it's actually gotten really interesting. Firestorm, what started off as a sort of a bunch of crazy ideas is now actually taking rather a nice shape to it.
Right.
And I think that now is a perfect time for us to actually capitalise on that and to start delivering more materials that explain more and more of these relationships. I think also, when you first start a game, sometimes, well, in our case, it suffered a little bit by not having a fully evolved backplot that we shared externally. We knew it ourselves. But we learned a lesson with Dystopian Wars that it's important to create a fully formed storyline,
right?
And I think that's something that Dystopian Wars very much helped us do with Firestorm. If that makes sense, we kind of because originally I'd built a spaceship game, and I knew how I wanted them all to fight and how I wanted to dislike each other, but there was sort of a I didn't feel that I needed to get it out there to the customer in as much detail as I should. Whereas with Dystopian Wars, that's very much that. What hammered home is that people love that stuff, and I think we learned a lesson there to make sure that we're kind of more structured and more complete. So I think I tried to keep it not non-complex, but now it's kind of gotten very large, and of course you say there's 20 factions. So I think you'll see a lot more from us with documents and articles and short stories. I love it when the guys do short stories. I think it's great fun.
Awesome. And so that's the Xenian League. And then against them is the Kurek Alliance. So you've got the Dendrenzi on one side, now you've got the Terran on the other. And their two primary allies are the Aquan Prime, who are the pretentious, priggish fish, of course.
Awesome
who
fish.
think they know better than everybody else and want to tell everybody else what to do.
It's trash.
And the Ceruleans, who are sort of...
You know better than everybody else.
Let's just say that the faction choice didn't fall far from the tree, if you know what I'm saying. And so they got the Aquan Prime, which are fish sort of oriented, and then you've got the Ceruleans, who are sort of the cold-blooded. They're more reasoned, they're more reasonable. They're scientists. They're sort of they'll take a century to study some star system just out of curiosity, see what's going on there. They're really good with things like artillery and other things that require a lot of math. And so you've got each faction has, each side or alliance has three major factions that are represented, and then a host of smaller systems and races and groups and conglomerates that work underneath them that either, some may fill a niche that particular faction may not have, or now, that's how it used to be. Now it's like most of the Vadrith and the Turquoise, they all have their own fleets, if I understand correctly, right?
Yeah, if you could almost say that probably the smartest thing that the Terrans ever did with the Kurek Alliance was actually was their ability to broker deals. They did actually become they worked incredibly hard to kind of form the relationships with these races and to pull them all together. So I think there's a lot of the guiding principles. It's all about they're very much about the strength of the whole alliance. That's what drives the Kurek Alliance. It's the idea that they are very strong together. And they've got certain things like Hawker, which is supplying an awful lot of technology. You've got some more strange stuff in there, like the Terrakians and things who are kind of like they're in there, but they don't know. So to some extent, they don't know why they're in the alliance. Generally speaking, certain things like Hawker they're the military backbone for the development aspect of things. The Xenians are Well, he's probably the sort of. I mean, that's an odd relationship amongst all of those guys, because that is, as an alliance goes, they're very much in it for themselves. They are all. There's less love for each other and more love for themselves in this one, but they've all got a kind of, at the end of the day, the thing that underpins them is there's less the relationship and more the fact that they're all crazed on conquest. They all want to basically own these areas of space. So their alliances are basically based. They're a confrontational alliance,
right?
So likewise, you've got the Relthosa, who sort of, they are an odd bunch. They're not pleasant folk, the Relthosa, or pleasant insectoids, or whatever you want to call them.
So what I'm hearing is the Xenian League is the plucky underdogs that really just want to be able to stand up on their own 2 feet, and that's what I'm hearing. No. But anyway,
well, you would hear, wouldn't you?
I would hear that.
Of course, you're going to take that.
You better believe it.
You're not going to listen to a word I say.
I didn't hear a thing.
Right.
You know what I heard? I heard blah, 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 Dramos, blah, 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 nuked your planet, blah, 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 blah. That's all I heard. So for those of you listening who don't know what we're talking about with Dramos, and we keep dropping that, Dramos was a planet that was very important to the newborn Dindrenzi Federation, and the Terran Alliance nuked it completely and completely destroyed it. And it is now used as basically a shrine by the Dindrenzi to remind everybody, oh, by the way, this is what they're going to do to all of our planets if we let them, so that's why we have to destroy them. Which makes perfect sense to me.
Nah, Craig, I'm going to go back to the director on this one. You're playing a race in the game, a faction in the game that is basically everybody else is a convenience to them. It's
That's
that
right.
they will use them. They will conveniently use them to do whatever they want. You know, they're behind they're the secret, the quiet, still voices in the background behind everybody else.
Exactly.
With the conspiracies and the pushing and the cajoling and the twisting, and that's what the director do best. If you're on the, they're a faction that is basically all about making war and making trouble, and if they can make more war, they can make more money.
Exactly. Well, see, this is where I'm coming from. In Firestorm Armada, I play the soul of the Xenian League, and in Planetfall, I'm playing the mind of the Xenian League. That's the way I like to think of it.
Yeah.
Evil. Oh man, how do you guys put up with this?
I don't know. All I know is he's evil, like his faction.
Well, evil is such a judgmental term, really. I mean, can't we just agree that there are different gradations of? There are 50 shades of gray, Russ.
All right, look. The Dunkin' Donuts guy's giving us the evil eye, so we got to wrap it up here soon. So, what other factions haven't we covered yet of the 25?
Well, we haven't. We've talked briefly about the Kuruk Alliance and the Xenian League, but let's not forget the Marauders and the Mercenaries, which include entire races. The Oroshan Imperium is a very awesome little idea. Niel, can you give me just a really quick, one sentence? What is the Oroshan Imperium?
Well, they're basically they're sort of they're nomadic. Their homeworld's gone, so they kind of live on their giant ships, and they basically will hire themselves out to. They're very good at killing things. They've got a lot of their ships are converted colony style ships, and they're very good at killing, and they will hire themselves out, but their loyalty is purely based on who pays them the most money. So they're not a massive. I wouldn't call them just untrustworthy, but they are pragmatic in the way that they view warfare and they view their relationships, for want of an expression. Mm-hmm. So they got these things. They got these things called blood tribes. So they're fun. I mean, we've just re-released their box sets, and we've done a lot of work on the models, and I'm actually really excited by the new models. And
they look awesome.
There's some new pictures going up this week on them. Actually, they play really fun. Actually, they're a great fleet. So whilst they are for hire, they're not a marauder as such, if you know what I mean, because they're not true pirates in the sense of the word, but they are they're available because
they're pragmatic. I like the pragmatic works. Yeah.
Their entire structure of what's left of their society is literally built on the idea of trade, and if the trading is that they will sell themselves to kill things, then that's their trade.
Right. It's real politic, is all it is.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, yeah.
This is the director coming through again. So there's those guys. I mean, so these are all like smaller fleets that have more of a theme. Maybe you've got pirates, you've got the stellar syndicates, which are if the mafia went into space.
Exactly. I mean, the syndicate are among some of the coolest looking ships. Actually, I always like to think that when I first saw them, I likened them to kind of classic 1950s cars. You know.
Yep. Exactly.
I kind of and I remember sort of when Crispy, who built the Planetfall models, he's the guy who built those. I mean, there is an evolution occurring within the mercenaries in the game, because when we first started with them, they were sort of they were a bit bitty in as much as that you could. There was a few models that we made, and they were very much done in conjunction with a little booklet that we did.
Uh-huh.
But we've kind of gone back to them now, and we've started taking a look at where we can evolve them all. So there's a lot happening behind the scenes on the Marauder fleets. They've gone from their sort of bitty piecemeal approach to very much now forming more complete entities in their own right.
Mm-hmm.
There's a slight complication as to who will some of them. You have to look kind of closely as to who will work with who, sort of thing, in terms of the relationships. You know, who they like. There's a document, there's a PDF that people can download that gives an idea behind how the kind of the Omnidyne and the Corsairs and the Syndicate and the traders, there's a thing called the Syndicate trade, how they kind of work. Probably the one that's going to get the biggest treatment out of the whole lot is the Pathogen.
Right. I was just going to ask about. Yep.
Yeah, they're set for a very large an increase, because the intelligence that is the Pathogen, which started off as a kind of a military research project that went a bit askew. They are evolving significantly in the game, and actually you're going to see them appear as a ground force in Planetfall as well.
Oh, nice. Yeah, while I was doing all the research this morning, I did notice that there's some really cool little Easter eggs about the infected or the Pathogen on your faction write-ups on the website, which was very
neat. We have a whole 28mm game that's an element of a part of Spec Ops that fits in. It's a project that we started working on, which we call Infestation, we haven't quite totally decided on which set of figures are going in, but it's either going to be Directorate or Dindrenzi, and it's a team of specialists that are sent into a secret military base that's been infected by Pathogen. And the idea being is that these guys have got to get in, and they've got to get through the installation and get to the data. It's highly likely it's going to be Directorate, because it kind of works in quite well with that, because the Pathogen have infested some of the ideas that they've taken over some of their command, some of their defense robots and things. So there's not only have the people been messed up by the Pathogen, but they've also taken over the robots and things. So it's a sort of fun little plot line that we've been dabbling with on that one. Of course, the beauty of the Pathogen is that they will basically kill and fight everything that's before them. There's no concept of loyalty or agreements or alliances there, you know.
That sounds awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah, well, they started off as a kind of the idea was that we would modify existing Firestorm ships with those guys, but we've now evolved them into their own. The idea means that they've evolved into their own fleet structures and their own ships now. So we're going to be sculpting a whole set of new models for that.
Very cool.
Awesome. So there's 25 now, and soon to be 26. And so obviously we weren't going to be able to touch on them all. And we actually got more information from Niel about upcoming projects and stuff going on with this. And so we really should call it a night so Niel can pretend he's going to bed when in fact he will actually stay up for at least one more hour cruising the internet and then doing emails.
Right.
When you say it like that, it sounds wrong.
It's not making any judgment calls. I'm just saying that we're about to get kicked out of Dunkin' Donuts, and it's time for you to continue your nightly regimen and stay up till 4 a.m.
Well, that's probably a smart move because I was reaching the point where I was just waffling nonsense to you anyway. So I hope I totally made some sense. But lots of exciting stuff in the Firestorm Galaxy.
Absolutely.
Well, Niel, thank you so much for joining us here in the Lost Chapter in Dunkin' Donuts, and we look forward to chatting with you in the main show here in about a week.
Yeah, and Derek and Derek
too, right?
Oh yeah, okay, we'll get Derek out. Yeah, he eats donuts, I'm sure.
Nice. Well, thanks, Niel.
Thanks, Niel. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for purchasing a D6G Lost Chapter. Supporting the show helps it grow.